Welcome to Road to Recovery.
Welcome to the Road to Recovery, advocacy and insights for trucking accidents with Sagi Shaked. Sagi is the founder of Shaked Law, personal injury lawyers, and is ranked as one of the top 100 trial lawyers in the United States by the American Trial Lawyers Association. With a wealth of experience in personal injury, wrongful death, and complex litigation cases, he passionately advocates for victims and has recovered multi-million-dollar settlements in damages for his clients. I am your host, Sophia Morales, and today's episode is Hit and Run Truck Accidents, What to Do When the Driver Flees the Scene. Welcome back, Sagi. I'm so happy to have you here.
Thanks, Sophia. I look forward to this episode.
Exactly. So let's start with the fundamentals. What qualifies as a hit and run in a trucking accident under Florida law?
So I would say this it's the same in almost every state. I'll tell you Florida, but it's pretty much the same. So if a truck driver or any driver really causes damage to property, to a person, or someone dies and they take off from the scene, that would be a hit and run. So don't just think of a hit and run as an injury. It's more than that. It's property damage. It's causing someone, unfortunately, to die, and also injuries as well. So we see that a lot. And that's, I think, typical for pretty much every state. We see it a lot here in Florida. I know, for example, there was my nephew was 6 years old on a bicycle, hit by, we think it was a truck. We just don't know, hit and run, and, spent a couple of weeks in the hospital. So have personal experience, and you don't realize how often this occurs until you have personal experience with it. And then you realize this is a real problem down here in South Florida, but it's also a problem throughout the United States with hit and run drivers.
Wow, that's really intense, especially when you're dealing with a 6-year-old. Oh my goodness. Poor guy.
Right. Yeah. And no one was out. I mean, he's doing good now, but at the time, I mean, he spent 3 weeks in the hospital, and, no one saw anything. And the person who hit him, I mean, how do you hit a 6-year-old and leave, right? Like, I mean, who does that? You've got to be pretty inhumane. But there are people like that. There's a mix of everything in our society, I guess.
Well, yeah, and I imagine there's some panic and a whole lot of concern that goes with it. And yeah, as you said, if you're one of these people who's really focused on self and not so much on community, I suppose there's a temptation there.
Yeah. Yeah. Or, sometimes it could be the person has, a felony conviction. And remember, you do a hit and run, you cause someone injuries, that's a felony. You cause someone property damage, depending on the amount of the property damage, that's a misdemeanor. You cause someone to die in a hit and run and you take off, that's a felony. So, and that's pretty much consistent in every state. I mean, those are consistent laws. Nobody likes people who do the hitting and running.
So, what are kind of the first steps legally that a victim should be taking if a truck driver flees the scene?
So, I mean, ideally, the first step is to document the scene, which means take photographs, try to see if there's any witnesses who saw the driver leaving. So a lot of times there are witnesses. We've had cases where people have chased the at-fault driver and, follow them, and you get the 911 recordings and you can hear that whole conversation as they're chasing them and giving the license plate information. Sometimes you're not so lucky and there are no witnesses. We're working on a case right now where we have an individual that was run over on the sidewalk, and there was a person that was stopped short that potentially could be at fault for causing the crash. And we didn't have any witnesses to tell us who that driver was. But luckily, we had an investigative team that was awesome. They went to the scene and we were able to get footage from a local establishment that wasn't too far away. And then when you hire a IT company, and especially that deals with videography, they were able to zoom in on the license plate, and we were able to figure out who was the owner of that car and, get justice for our client. Now, that case is still going on, so I know we're going to get justice, but it's just a matter of time right now because this person or individual driving that vehicle took off. So we'll see what happens there. So document the scene, You want to get witness statements. You want to call 911 immediately, and then preserve any evidence that you have. And then obviously, if you have insurance, you want to contact your insurance. Even if they don't know, you don't know who caused it, you can still try to get that information. And we've had cases where we had the first three letters of a license plate, but we didn't have the rest of the letter or number combination. I remember it was letters in this case. And then when you start nailing it down, how many blue Toyota Camrys are there with those three letters? Not many. So that's how we were able to find it. So some of the things to do, again, document the scene, see if there's any videos or dash cams or any witnesses, call the authority, the police usually, speak to your insurance company, and then they'll start chasing it down to figure out who caused the crash. And then obviously get a lawyer that knows what they're doing so they can help you out.
Yeah. Well, and that kind of begs the question, right? Because this advice assumes that you're conscious and able to do the legwork that you're discussing here. What happens if for some reason you were pretty badly injured, you were knocked out and you missed that window of capture? What do you have to do when you become conscious and you realize there's a problem?
Yeah, and that happens a lot, unfortunately, especially down here in South Florida where you get hit and run drivers. So, what happens in those scenarios? You hope that there's witnesses that saw it, and sometimes there aren't any. You hope that there's, we had a bicycle hit by a truck, and we weren't able to, the client didn't remember anything. She spent 3 weeks in the hospital, got to us almost 3 weeks later, and then we were able to go to the scene. It happened to be at a place that was very residential. There was a building, a condominium building, that picked up a portion of the crash, but you really couldn't make it out. Even with high definition, expanding the video, you still couldn't make it out. Luckily, the valet in that residential building had information, and we were able to find out who that company was. So sometimes you get lucky with the witnesses, and then unfortunately, there are times where you really don't. I mean, we've had situations where by the time we get involved, there is no information. It was dark outside. Nobody could see anything. There were no witnesses. There were no video recordings or digital recordings, and there was nothing that could be done. So that happens, unfortunately, a lot as well.
So I'm hearing if you wake up in the hospital, probably your best bet is outreach to the insurance company and a lawyer like ASAP.
Yeah, immediately reach out, because if you're in the hospital all beat up and, especially if you have a head injury, the last thing you need to be doing is being worried about how do I find out who this person was that caused the crash or did the hitting and running. So your best bet is really contact your insurance company, but more importantly, contact an attorney that has experience, a personal injury attorney, a trial lawyer who has experience, and a team in place ready to help you out.
And I think you've kind of almost answered this, but I'm going to just ask it so that it's clear completely. Can surveillance, dash cam, ring cam kind of footage be used to track down the hit and run driver?
Yeah, absolutely. Police use the surveillance cameras from facilities next, whether it's a gas station, a restaurant. We had one where there was a law firm, a bankruptcy firm that picked up a crash. They definitely can use the surveillance and definitely use the dash cam to help them lead to finding the person that caused the crash and that left the scene. So those are good tools that everyone should look at, whether you're the victim or the victim's family or the attorney. Don't underestimate the power of a dash cam.
And speaking of victim's family, if you have a loved one who has ended up in that hospital bed and they're not conscious yet, should you be reaching out to an attorney on their behalf, like immediately?
Yeah, I would strongly recommend that, because most of the time when we're getting involved in cases, the individuals in the hospital, whether they're unconscious or they've just been, gotten out of surgery, and they need someone who's going to act as an advocate for them. And that's a lawyer. But in order to get the lawyer, they need their family members to reach out for them and get that process started, because it's critical. Evidence disappears in these cases. Usually what you'll see is it's getting better nowadays, but recordings of the scene from local establishments, they disappear usually after 14 days. So
Oh,
you want to get there. Now they're going a little bit longer because the terabytes and memories are, of these computers
much
are
larger.
getting,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's getting easier, but you don't want to rely on that. You need to get out to the scene right away. It makes a difference on how the case will present and if you can get a recovery.
And speaking of recovery, what role does uninsured motorist, for example, play in a hit and run truck accident like this? Does it mean you're not SOL if you can't find the guy?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So it depends on what state you're in. So every state has, they're supposed to sell you uninsured motorist coverage. So what that means is uninsured motorist coverage means in case you're hit by a person that doesn't have insurance, or in a case like you're asking a hit and run, they call them phantom vehicles, where a phantom vehicle cut someone off and took off. You'll be able to sue your own insurance company for the at fault driver's negligence. So let's say you have the at fault driver took off and you don't know who the at fault driver is. We'll just say it's a silver. We'll just use Toyota Camry. I don't want to pick on them, but just picking on it for this purpose, right? Let's just say it's a silver Toyota Camry, but you don't remember the license tag or any other, you know, features of the vehicle. You can make a claim if you purchased uninsured motorist coverage, make a claim for the driver who did the hitting and running, even though you don't know who they are. Your insurance company will step into that driver's shoes and they become the hit and run driver. And this way you can make a claim with your insurance company for that driver's negligence. And that's what the purpose of uninsured motorist coverage is. So sometimes they call it underinsured motorist. You'll see that in a setting where if the driver hit you, let's say they didn't take off, but they don't have enough insurance, you can then go after your own insurance company, the underinsured or uninsured portion of the policy, and that'll give you coverage. Now, keep in mind, especially here in Florida, there is no requirement to purchase uninsured motorist coverage. So if you don't have it, you need to get it. A lot of the drivers here don't have coverage. And then I would say that's for most states. So most states don't require it. There are some states that do require the insurance companies to sell with every policy uninsured motorist coverage. So it's on you to go and get the insurance that you need. And uninsured motorist coverage is one of the most important things that anyone who's on the road can get, because I've seen it happen way too often. Let's go back. Remember, I was speaking earlier about my nephew's case. We were able to use the uninsured motorist portion of his father's policy, my brother, in that case, to make a claim with the insurance company, even though we never found out who caused the crash because there were no witnesses. The videos that we were able to get weren't working, and didn't capture the crash and didn't capture anything afterwards from the homes in the nearby area. So in that case, we didn't find the driver, but we were able to make a claim with the uninsured motorist coverage portion of the policy. So super important, get uninsured motorist coverage and definitely open those claims sooner rather than later so the insurance company doesn't claim prejudice.
Now, another question for you, because we're going down this rabbit hole with the uninsured motorist insurance. What happens if you don't have that?
Oof, believe it or
Yeah.
not, we had that situation too, and I hate making those phone calls. So if you have a driver who took off from the scene and did a hitting and running, and you can't find that driver, you can't find that company, you can't find that motor vehicle or the owner of the vehicle, and you, let's say we'll use Florida, you live in Florida where uninsured motorist is not required, and you don't live with anyone who has uninsured motorist, and there's no uninsured motorist in the household, meaning coverage,
Mhm.
then you're out of luck,
Oh,
unfortunately. And that happens. It happens a lot. That's why it's so important that individuals get uninsured motorist coverage.
yeah. It probably makes the difference between ending up in bankruptcy and not ending up in bankruptcy.
Exactly. Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. What happens is, you get into a crash and suddenly you have medical bills and you're out of work and you have no nothing to cover, nothing to pay for it, or get justice for what happened. And sometimes the injuries are severe. What do? So this is like your safety net, just in case you get hit by an uninsured driver or a driver that takes off from the scene.
Speaking of taking off from the scene, how do trucking companies respond when their driver disappears after a crash?
So that could happen. So believe it or not, it's happened with ours where the trucking company can't locate their driver. So they took off from the scene, and then we were able to find the company that owned the truck based on their DOT numbers on the side. We were able to identify who the driver was, but we could not find the driver. So even if you can't find the driver, the company is still responsible for their driver's negligence. And they're also going to get fined as well by the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, because you shouldn't be leaving the scene of an accident. That's just common sense, I think. Although maybe it's not so common because people do it all the time. So maybe it's a common understanding we all have, and then common sense, I don't know, because what's common
I
for me
think
maybe
it,
not common for someone else.
yeah, I think it maybe evaporates in the adrenaline and the shock.
Could be. I mean, and then people, I guess, get scared and leave the scene. You know, when I've seen people leave the scene, it's either when they're in a commission of a crime, they leave the scene. So obviously they have intent. They never planned on staying because they don't want to get caught for their crime. Number two is when I see people that are driving under the influence. So you'll see these at nighttime accidents for hit and runs. People will leave the scene thinking they won't get caught, or that no one saw them, or there's no witnesses or video cameras anywhere. So they don't want to get caught with a DUI. And then people under the influence of narcotic or an illegal substance, they don't want to be caught at the scene. So they also leave. You're probably better off staying at the scene, because a DUI with leaving the scene is a much higher criminal penalty, meaning a lot more jail time than staying at the scene. So, but that, all depends on the specific individual.
What happens if the truck can't be identified or is unmarked? The generic white panel van.
Right. Yeah. So that could be a problem if we can't chase down and find out who the trucking company or truck driver is. Then you're really left with one alternative, and that would be your uninsured motorist coverage, unless of course there was a construction, roadway defect, or a construction company that led people to have this type of collision and they took off. Aside from that, or like a case like my nephew's case, where you have neighborhoods where private gated neighborhoods where they're having people just fly in the neighborhood and they're not doing anything about it, that could be problematic, and you maybe have a cause of action for their negligence. But taking those apart, if you're on a regular roadway and you can't identify the company or the driver, you look at your uninsured motorist coverage. And if you don't have any, then you're really out of luck.
I like that you brought in that thought that it might not just be the driver or the trucking company that has some responsibility for happened, but there might be other third parties that you could go after as well, depending on the circumstances.
Yeah. So sometimes you will have that. I mean, there are third parties, and we've had them where you have people take off. And so we've got to look at what's the real reason they're taking off. If it's not the narcotics, alcohol, or the felony, there might be another reason. And we don't know, but we want to explore and see what's going on in that specific community or in that complex. Are they having a lot of crashes before? And if they are, how come they're not putting in speed bumps? We've had that case before. So there's different angles, and that's why you got to go to a lawyer to really help you determine what can be done. And sometimes there isn't anything that can be done, but thinking outside the box helps.
So why is hiring an experienced truck accident attorney critical in these cases? I think I have a hint already.
All right, yeah, you got a little bit of it. So you want someone who knows what to do, knows where to look, knows how to gather evidence, knows to get the scene documented, has the investigative team in place. I mean, we have one where I think I've talked about this in prior episodes, where our clients on walking on the sidewalk, there was a witness who said he was walking in the street, which he clearly wasn't. and he gets hit by a truck. Now, thankfully, that truck driver didn't leave, but here's where an investigation team can make a difference. Investigation team went out to the scene. We went to the scene. We located a local establishment, and it clearly showed that what the witness saw was wrong, because the video captured the individual standing on the side, not standing, but walking on the sidewalk. At the time, the truck driver lost control, went on the sidewalk, and ran him over. So you have to have a strong investigative team. You have to, find out those video cameras. Is there dash cam? Is there any type of evidence that can make a difference? Have a videographer who knows how to expand and really fine tune in. If you need to get license information, contact the authorities. There's a lot that goes on, and really a person should be focused on their health and not worry so much about trying to prove where this driver or who this driver is. And that's why you hire professionals to take care of that.
I love that. Thank you for sharing all of this insight today. It's more complex, and there's more possibility here than I ever would have imagined.
Yeah, it seems like all these little areas just expand, and there's so much to do. And there's such a requirement of time on the part of the attorney and the team to get it done. So don't do it yourself. Hire someone that can help you with your case.
I love that. And thanks to all of you for tuning into The Road to Recovery with attorney Sagi Shaked. For more information or to contact Sagi, visit shakedlaw.com, and make sure to like, subscribe, and leave us a review, and share this with someone you care about. And until next time, we'll see you then.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.